Welcome to Incredible Idaho. I'm Wayne Walker. I want to show you something. Take a look at this cover photo and these inside. What beautiful shots. Now, how much time goes into capturing these images, and who are the lucky folks who do this for a living? As any editor will tell you, wildlife photography is a very competitive business, and those who are talented enough to make a living at it must possess enormous amounts of patience, persistence, and discipline. A healthy knowledge of wild animals and their habits helps a lot too. In our first story tonight, we'll introduce you to Ron Spomer, the photographer who took these pictures. He has all the required qualities and more, including, as you'll see, a rather wacky sense of humor.
Sort of called a floating muskrat blind. Yet the idea is that you will imitate a muskrat hut. Came up with the idea of putting a dome that would mimic a muskrat hut over a float tube, and that way you could rather inconspicuously float amongst the waterfowl. Well, you know, sometimes it actually is worse than not having one, and this might be one of those occasions. On some ponds I've gone in where waterfowl was fairly acclimated to people as they are here, and float around in a tube and they ignore you because they think you're a fisherman, and you put the blind on and they act like something from Mars has just landed, and the whole lake empties with us screaming and honking and splashing and flapping. So we may be disappointed here, but I want to work some ruddy ducks that live on this lake, and when they first come in the spring, they're a little bit shy yet. Right here. Ha! They'll never see me coming. Quack, 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 quack. I figure if you look like a duck and you feel like a duck, you might as well talk like a duck. Quack, quack. Oh, look, someone left a camera on the dock. I could use one of those. Stealth photographer. Patience and persistence, you have to keep at it. You've got to be patient until the lighting is right and your subjects are right. You have to be persistent in pursuing that. And then you have to have either a natural eye or a developed eye for composition and beauty. It is quite often you'll find something half hidden in the cattails, preening, sitting on a log or something, and if you just go blundering by, you'll miss your opportunity. So I check things out carefully before I go, and then I turn around and put the old flippers into action and head for the backwaters. A lot of people think when they go to photograph wildlife, they're photographing animals or birds or snakes or whatever the subject matter is, and I tell students in my workshops, you don't photograph things, you photograph light. It's reflected light. And you can have the world's largest deer or elk, for instance, in your viewfinder. And if you've got ugly light, you're going to have an ugly picture, no matter how big it is. You might have a record. There's this elk, the biggest one anyone's ever photographed, but it's not going to necessarily be a beautiful picture. It's light that makes the image, reflected light. I've got a wood duck I photographed on a pond that was reflecting autumn colors, and the pond is orange and bronze and yellow and red, and it's just gorgeous, the color in it, and of course the wood duck is so colorful. And the two together seem to work really well, and that shot has done fairly well for me. I've had a couple of magazine covers with it and a calendar cover and a number of things. All right, there's probably about 10 to a dozen ruddies, one scaup and one bufflehead, both drakes. It starts off as fun. It's like hunting or fishing. You want to be outdoors. You want to be with wildlife. You want to sneak up on it. You want to see it in its secret world, doing things that you don't normally see. And it's thrilling, it's exciting, it's all the reasons that most people get involved in wildlife in one form or another. But once you decide to start making money at it and turn it into a business, you have to treat it as a business. And the upshot is you spend more time in the office, going over slides over a light table, filing slides, going to the computer, finding markets, convincing people to use your stuff, sending out submissions, logging submissions in again. I spend more time in the office than I do outdoors. You know, I started off spending more time out photographing, but once you get a collection, several tens of thousands of slides in the file, it's time to start selling them. You can take more and more and more, and you just really can't make a living that way unless you get them out there
Canada goose
for buyers to see.
coming in for a landing. Oh, it also helps to be a masochist in this business. You must love to suffer cold, heat, mosquitoes, dampness, dryness, excruciating muscle pain, excruciating.
I thought I'd be out fishing and hunting and writing stories about that, but I never imagined I'd be in Idaho, for one thing. I always dreamed about getting to the Rocky Mountains and seeing all those wonderful things I'd read about. Can't explain it, just a natural interest. It's like, I think of Aldo Leopold's old line about you can do without golf, but who could live without goose music? It's just something inside of me. It makes me that interested. I've been like that ever since I was a kid. Just had a fascination for it. I think that's the way it is with most people who are interested in wildlife. You're either naturally attracted to it and you find it fascinating, or who cares? Favorite subject matter? Gosh, I don't know, that's a tough one. I'd probably have to go with birds. I've always been fascinated with birds, even though I'm a hunter and I love mammals, big game animals. I don't know, day in and day out, the color, I think, of birds, and the fact that they're awake and diurnal. You don't have to be sneaking around at the edge of night hoping to have enough light to get a picture of them. They're out all day, and they're colorful, and they're mating rituals and antics and dances, and there's just such a variety with birds. You need to know when they're moving, times of day, seasons. For instance, the red-winged blackbirds right now, in maybe 3 weeks now, they'll start nesting, and they're real territorial, and you can paddle within 10 feet of them, and they will remain on their territory. They might complain about you being there, and then when you get too close, you know it's time to back off. But usually if we're in, say 10 to 20 feet of a bird the size of a red-winged blackbird with a large lens, you can get a pretty good image. Oh yeah, of course there are always ethics when you're outdoors. The photographer ideally should be invisible to his subject. It rarely happens. Wildlife is just too sharp for that. They hear you, they smell you, they see you, they know you're there. But wild animals also have a knack for knowing when something is dangerous and when it isn't. They have a flight distance. And if you know their behavior and watch them closely, you can detect when they're becoming nervous and when you're disrupting them and need to back off. Study their times and their patterns, and then set up a blind. Sometimes it might take 2 weeks of moving a blind slowly closer to position to get everything just right. It's a long and it would be tedious, except for there's so many interesting things going on all the time. It's rarely tedious. Occasionally boring while you wait. Sometimes you may sit in a blind for 8 hours at a crack. But once the wildlife shows up, things start to happen.
Rollin', 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 keep them doggies rollin' rawhide. Through wind and rain and weather, hell bent for leather, wishing this goose was by my side. All the film I'm wasting, good victuals I should be tasting, if I just stayed home and had breakfast. Hit 'em up, move 'em out, raw film. Shoot 'em out, blast 'em out, crank 'em out, click 'em out. Waste all that raw film.